That suits you. You will never give birth before me.
Mistress poisoned wife's drink to get rid of her pregnancy, unaware she's the wife to the president. Esteemed viewers, welcome to luxurious true life stories. Please like and subscribe for more captivating luxury true stories. Let's get into the story. Cynthia Jones spent her days behind a glass window in the hospital billing office, speaking softly to strangers who were often angry, frightened, or exhausted. She had a calming voice, the kind people trusted even when they didn't mean to. She explained payment plans, searched for missing insurance approvals, and quietly paid small balances herself when she knew a family would skip medication to afford it. No one noticed those payments except the accounting system, and she never told anyone. After work she walked home instead of taking a taxi, saving every coin she could. Her apartment was small but carefully arranged. The couch was second-hand, the table slightly uneven, yet the walls were filled with paintings, warm colors, children laughing, hands reaching toward sunlight. Painting was her comfort. Every night she washed her hands, tied her hair back, and painted until midnight. Her dream was simple: one day open a place where sick children could paint their fears away. She never spoke of it because dreams felt fragile when spoken aloud. She lived quietly, spoke gently, and expected little from life. Love, she believed, was not loud promises but someone choosing to stay. She did not know that very soon her life would cross with someone who believed love was status, admiration, and achievement, and that meeting would slowly reshape her entire future. Desmond Richard arrived at the corporate office earlier than everyone else, not because he loved the job, but because he loved being seen as dedicated. He adjusted his tie in the elevator mirror, rehearsing expressions that looked confident but effortless. To colleagues he was charming, persuasive, and quick with humor. To clients he was polished and attentive. But inside, every achievement felt temporary. His childhood had been filled with eviction notices and whispered arguments about money. He had promised himself he would never again be ordinary. His evenings were rarely quiet. He moved through upscale lounges and business gatherings, memorizing the habits of wealthy men, how they spoke, laughed, and dismissed others without appearing rude. He practiced copying them until it became natural. Compliments fueled him. Being admired felt safer than being known. Relationships, to him, were partnerships that improved status. He believed affection followed success, not the other way around. Yet beneath the practiced confidence was a constant tension. Any reminder of simplicity irritated him. He avoided modest places and disliked conversations about contentment. Stability, to Desmond, meant climbing higher, never stopping. He didn't realize that soon he would meet someone who valued peace over prestige, and that her quiet sincerity would attract him before he understood why. Rain fell heavily that evening, turning the underground parking garage into a maze of reflections and echoing drips. Cynthia hurried toward the exit holding her sketch folder under her jacket, hoping the papers wouldn't soak. A sudden clicking sound made her stop. A car nearby refused to start, its headlights flickering weakly. The driver stepped out, frustrated, tapping the steering wheel before noticing her standing there. Desmond rarely asked strangers for help, but the silence of the garage and the stubborn engine forced him to drop his pride. Cynthia gently suggested checking the battery connection. She had learned basic fixes from years of solving problems alone. She held her phone light while he adjusted the cable. The engine roared back to life. He looked surprised, not just because the car worked, but because she hadn't tried to impress him or linger for attention. They spoke briefly near the exit, rain still falling outside. She declined the ride, choosing to walk home as usual. He watched her disappear into the rain with steady steps, oddly unsettled by the calm confidence she carried. For the first time in a long while, someone had treated him without curiosity about his status, and the unfamiliar feeling stayed with him long after he drove away. A few days later Desmond returned to the hospital under the excuse of delivering documents for a client, though he could have sent them electronically. He passed the billing office twice before gathering the courage to greet Cynthia. She welcomed him with the same calm politeness she offered everyone, which strangely pleased him more than admiration ever had. He suggested coffee after her shift. She hesitated only long enough to finish helping a waiting patient. Their meetings became simple routines. They visited small cafes, shared quiet walks through public gardens, and spent long evenings in bookstores where conversations mattered more than appearances. Cynthia spoke about art and healing, about how colors could comfort children afraid of hospitals. Desmond listened, surprised by how peaceful he felt when no one expected him to perform success. With her, silence wasn't awkward. Weeks turned into months. He began rearranging his schedule to match hers, something he had never done for anyone. Cynthia trusted slowly, but she smiled more freely around him. Neither noticed how different their views of life were yet. They only saw kindness and attention. For the first time, both believed they had found someone who understood them, though each meant something entirely different by that understanding. Desmond proposed on a quiet evening beside the lake they often visited. There were no crowds or photographers, only city lights reflecting across the water. Cynthia accepted with soft certainty, believing steady companionship mattered more than grand gestures. Within weeks they arranged a small ceremony attended by a few co-workers and neighbors. The celebration was modest, yet she felt deeply secure standing beside him. They moved into a compact apartment close to his office. Cynthia decorated it with warm colors and paintings, while Desmond focused on upgrading furniture piece by piece. At first they enjoyed the routine, shared breakfasts, late conversations, planning small goals. She packed his lunches. He praised her cooking. The simplicity felt comforting to her and temporarily calming to him. Gradually, however, Desmond began noticing how different their expectations were. He wanted progress measured in visible success, larger spaces, impressive gatherings, influential friends. Cynthia valued peace and stability. What she saw as contentment, he started to see as limitation. He didn't voice it directly yet, but a quiet dissatisfaction had begun forming, subtle enough that neither realized it was the beginning of change. The shift was gradual, almost unnoticeable at first. Desmond began staying later at work, claiming urgent meetings and unexpected clients. When he returned home, he carried a new sharpness in his tone, as if every word had to prove something. He started commenting on Cynthia's clothes, suggesting she upgrade her wardrobe to match the company executives' wives. What once sounded like advice slowly turned into correction. He spoke of image, reputation, and influence more often than love. Cynthia tried to adjust. She styled her hair differently, attended networking dinners she didn't enjoy, and practiced small talk with strangers who evaluated her silently. At one corporate event, she laughed softly at a joke she barely understood, only to hear Desmond whisper later that she needed to be more impressive. The words lingered in her chest longer than he realized. She had married a man who once admired her calm simplicity. Now that same simplicity embarrassed him. At home, the air felt different. He began comparing her to others, subtly measuring her against women who seemed louder and more polished. Cynthia remained gentle, hoping patience would restore the warmth they once shared. But the distance between them grew quietly, not through shouting, but through expectations neither fully understood. She sensed she was losing something, though she couldn't yet name it. The company hosted a formal dinner at an elegant restaurant filled with polished glass and quiet conversations. Cynthia sat beside Desmond, carefully holding her posture the way he had coached her earlier that evening. She listened more than she spoke, smiling politely at colleagues discussing investments and promotions. For a moment she thought she was doing well, until someone asked about her work. Before she could answer, Desmond laughed lightly and said she handled small paperwork tasks at a hospital. The table chuckled. His tone sounded playful, but the meaning felt dismissive. Cynthia forced a smile, yet her hands tightened around the napkin in her lap. When she tried explaining how she helped families understand medical bills, he redirected the conversation toward his latest business deal, as if her contribution held no value in that room. The ride home was silent. Streetlights moved across the windshield while she searched for words that wouldn't start an argument. He finally mentioned she needed to learn how to present herself better among influential people. Cynthia nodded quietly, though the hurt remained. For the first time, she felt like a stranger beside the man she married, not through anger, but through absence of respect. A new fitness club opened near Desmond's office, designed for executives who preferred networking while exercising. He joined immediately, seeing it as another opportunity to meet influential contacts. On his second visit he noticed Lydia Williams' confident posture, precise speech, and the ease of someone accustomed to admiration. She introduced herself first, complimenting his discipline and asking about his career with genuine interest that felt refreshing after weeks of tension at home. Their conversations extended beyond workouts. Lydia spoke about ambition as if it were a shared language, praising his drive and subtly questioning why he settled into a modest domestic life. She never directly criticized Cynthia, yet every comparison she drew elevated achievement over comfort. Desmond found himself lingering after sessions, discussing plans and possibilities he rarely shared with anyone else. Unlike the calm quietness he experienced with his wife, Lydia energized him. Around her he felt successful rather than judged by expectations he could never fully reach. What began as casual conversations slowly turned into deliberate meetings, though he told himself it was only professional networking. He did not notice how quickly he started seeking her approval, or how rarely he mentioned his marriage anymore. The meetings moved beyond the gym. Lydia suggested lunch near the financial district, then evening drinks after work, always framed as harmless networking. Desmond agreed easily, convincing himself he deserved companionship that understood his ambitions. She listened closely, laughing at his frustrations and praising his potential. With her, every insecurity felt validated rather than questioned. Conversations turned personal. He spoke about feeling held back, about wanting a partner who matched his pace. Lydia never insulted Cynthia directly. Instead she asked careful questions that led him to his own conclusions. Soon he began hiding messages and silencing calls when he was home. The secrecy didn't feel wrong to him, it felt necessary to protect the excitement he had rediscovered. What started as emotional dependence became unmistakable affection. Late nights grew frequent, explanations shorter, patience thinner. Cynthia sensed the distance, but received only vague reassurances. Desmond convinced himself he had simply outgrown his marriage, while Lydia quietly encouraged the belief that a different life was waiting if he chose it. Lydia's words became firmer with time. She spoke about opportunity and timing, insisting that hesitation kept people trapped in average lives. Desmond began seeing his marriage not as a commitment but as an obstacle. One evening he returned home unusually serious, placing documents on the table before Cynthia could finish preparing dinner. The conversation he had rehearsed sounded colder aloud. He accused her of limiting his growth, of refusing to adapt to the world he needed to enter. The claims confused her. She had tried to change in every way he requested. She asked calmly if there was someone else. He denied it immediately, though his eyes shifted away. The silence that followed felt heavier than anger. Within days the legal process began, swift and distant, as if their shared years were administrative details. Cynthia packed quietly. She took only essentials and her paintings, leaving behind decorations she once chose with hope. The apartment echoed after she closed the door for the last time. Desmond felt relief mixed with discomfort he ignored, focusing on future plans. For Cynthia, the night marked an ending she never expected, and the uncertain beginning of a life she would have to rebuild alone. The studio apartment was barely large enough for a bed, a narrow table, and stacked canvases, yet Cynthia arranged it carefully. She placed her paints near the window where morning light entered gently, and she kept her schedule strict so she would not dwell on memories. Work remained the same, hospital forms, worried families, quiet reassurance, but now she walked home without expecting anyone waiting. Evenings became dedicated to rebuilding herself. She volunteered at a small community center teaching children how to draw simple shapes and colors. Their laughter softened the heaviness she carried. Instead of speaking about the past, she focused on routine: cook, clean, paint, sleep. The absence of criticism felt unfamiliar, almost peaceful, though loneliness visited often. Weeks passed and stability returned slowly. She no longer checked her phone expecting apologies that never came. Her goal became clearer: save money, keep teaching, and one day open a space for children who needed comfort. She didn't realize that soon someone observing the same center would notice her patience and kindness, and that meeting would change her path in ways she never imagined. Michael Coleman spent his mornings in places no one expected the president to be. Dressed simply, he volunteered at community programs under minimal security supervision, insisting he needed to understand ordinary lives without ceremony. He listened more than he spoke, helping distribute meals, organizing supplies, and repairing broken chairs rather than directing others to do it. Away from official schedules, he felt human rather than symbolic. He avoided recognition carefully. Only a small trusted security detail observed from a distance while allowing him space. He believed leadership required knowing struggles firsthand, but privately he also searched for something else: genuine connection untouched by title. Conversations with strangers felt honest because they didn't know who he was. It gave him calm he never found inside official residences. At a neighborhood clinic he noticed a volunteer patiently guiding a nervous child through a drawing exercise while waiting for treatment. Her voice carried quiet reassurance, the same tone he had heard countless times calming worried families nearby. He watched longer than intended, intrigued not by attention but by sincerity. He had seen admiration often. Kindness without expectation was rare. Cynthia noticed him when he helped gather scattered crayons a child had dropped across the waiting room floor. He apologized to the child as if he were the one who caused the mess, which made the boy laugh. She thanked him, assuming he was another volunteer. He introduced himself simply as Michael and asked about the drawing activity. She explained how colors distracted children from fear while waiting for treatment. They worked beside each other that afternoon, guiding children through simple sketches and handing out paper. The conversation stayed easy and unforced. He asked thoughtful questions about her art, not out of politeness but genuine interest. She spoke more openly than she expected, describing her dream of a place where children could heal through creativity. He listened without offering solutions or advice, just attention. When the clinic closed, they walked outside together. The evening was quiet, and neither rushed to leave. He suggested helping again the next week. She agreed without hesitation. To Cynthia he seemed calm and sincere, someone comfortable with silence. To Michael, she was refreshingly unaffected by expectations. Neither knew how significant this ordinary introduction would become. Their meetings became regular. Sometimes they volunteered at the clinic, other times they visited the small community center where Cynthia taught children painting basics. Michael struggled with simple sketches at first, and the children laughed kindly while she guided his hands patiently. He accepted the teasing easily, enjoying moments where no one expected perfection from him. Outside the center they shared simple routines: grocery shopping, cooking modest meals, and sitting on a park bench discussing everyday life. He never spoke about his career in detail, only saying his work was demanding and required privacy. Cynthia respected the boundary without curiosity. What mattered to her was consistency. He arrived when he promised and listened when she spoke. Trust formed slowly. She began smiling freely again, and he found comfort in her steady presence after long official days. Neither rushed affection, yet it grew naturally through shared calm. For the first time since her divorce, Cynthia felt safe beside someone. For Michael, she represented a life where he was valued for who he was rather than what he represented, though the truth about him remained carefully hidden for now. One evening Michael invited Cynthia to a private residence outside the city, explaining only that he needed to show her something important. The property was heavily secured, far more than she expected for an ordinary visit. As they approached the entrance, guards greeted him with formal respect. Cynthia stopped walking, confusion settling into silence as she realized this was no ordinary workplace. Inside, he finally spoke clearly. He explained his position, his reasons for moving anonymously among citizens, and why he feared telling her earlier would change how she saw him. The weight of the truth took time to settle. She struggled between disbelief and the calm familiarity she had grown to trust. After a long conversation, she understood the man she knew had never been false, only hidden behind responsibility. They agreed to keep their relationship private to protect her from public scrutiny. Weeks later, in a quiet legal ceremony attended by only necessary officials, they married. No publicity, no announcement, just a promise to continue their simple life while preparing for the moment they would eventually share it openly. Months into their quiet marriage, Cynthia began feeling unusually tired during her volunteer sessions. Michael noticed first, gently insisting she schedule a medical appointment. The confirmation came softly but changed everything. She was expecting a child. The news filled her with cautious joy. After years of disappointment, hope felt fragile but real. They chose to keep the pregnancy private for a while. Even inside the secure residence, Cynthia maintained her simple habits, painting, teaching children, walking in the garden. Michael became more attentive, adjusting his schedule to ensure he was present whenever possible. The future suddenly felt larger than both of them. As weeks passed, Michael began planning a formal Thanksgiving gala. Publicly, it was framed as an annual event celebrating community partnerships. Privately, he intended it to be the evening he would introduce his wife to the nation. Cynthia agreed, though nerves lingered. She had stepped away from public life once before. This time she would step forward, not alone, but as the president's wife, carrying their child. The presidential Thanksgiving gala filled the grand ballroom with polished chandeliers and quiet orchestral music. Political figures, business leaders, and selected guests moved across the floor exchanging greetings. Desmond attended confidently beside Lydia, proud to receive an invitation that elevated his social position. Lydia wore a striking gown, determined to stand out among influential guests. As they mingled, Lydia's attention fixed on a familiar face across the room. Cynthia stood gracefully near a private balcony, dressed elegantly yet simply, her pregnancy visible beneath soft fabric. Lydia's expression shifted from curiosity to sharp disbelief. She had not expected to see her there, especially not surrounded by security personnel and high-ranking officials offering subtle respect. Desmond froze when he recognized his former wife. He whispered confusion, assuming she was merely invited as a guest. Lydia, however, felt something darker, jealousy mixed with wounded pride. The sight of Cynthia calm and radiant unsettled her. She watched closely, trying to understand how the woman they once dismissed now stood at the center of a room neither of them fully belonged to. During the reception, servers carried trays of sparkling drinks across the hall. Lydia stepped aside briefly, her gaze never leaving Cynthia. She convinced herself the situation was unfair. The woman she had replaced now stood admired in a place Lydia wanted to dominate. Acting on impulse rather than thought, she interfered with one of the glasses before guiding a server towards Cynthia's table. Cynthia accepted the drink politely, unaware of the tension nearby. Moments after sipping, a sharp discomfort spread through her abdomen. She steadied herself against the chair, breathing carefully. Lydia approached, unable to hide a cruel satisfaction. She whispered mocking words about losing the pregnancy, convinced she had ended a life that stood in her way. The pain intensified quickly, drawing attention from nearby guests. Cynthia's expression turned pale as she struggled to remain standing. Lydia laughed softly, believing no one understood what had happened. Desmond watched in confusion, sensing something was terribly wrong but not yet grasping the full danger unfolding in front of them. Security personnel reacted immediately when Cynthia nearly collapsed. Before confusion could spread further, the music stopped and the hall shifted into alert silence. Michael moved quickly across the room, his composure gone the moment he saw her distress. He held her carefully while medical staff rushed forward. Guests stepped back, realizing this was no ordinary emergency. Lydia continued speaking carelessly until Michael turned toward her with unmistakable authority. His voice carried across the room as he identified Cynthia as his wife and the unborn child as his own. Shock rippled through the crowd. Desmond's expression drained of color as the truth settled heavily around him. The guards who had remained discreet now surrounded both him and Lydia. Medical staff escorted Cynthia out for treatment while officers restrained the pair responsible. Lydia's confidence vanished, replaced by panic, and Desmond stood speechless as consequences unfolded instantly. What they believed was a private act of jealousy had become a public crime witnessed by the highest authority in the room. The night meant to reveal joy instead revealed truth, and justice followed without delay. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of monitored equipment. Doctors confirmed that swift intervention had prevented serious harm. Cynthia rested, exhausted but stable, her hand resting gently over her abdomen. Michael remained beside her, refusing to leave even when officials requested briefings. For him, leadership could wait. Family could not. News of the arrest spread quickly, but Cynthia chose silence over attention. Recovery became her focus. In the weeks that followed, she avoided public appearances, dedicating her energy to healing and preparing for motherhood. Michael postponed the formal announcement he once planned, prioritizing privacy and safety instead of ceremony. Months later, when stability returned, Cynthia opened a small children's art therapy center funded quietly through personal savings and support from trusted partners. It was not grand, but it was real, filled with color, laughter, and second chances. Her life had traveled through betrayal, heartbreak, and danger, yet it led her here, safe, loved, and beginning again with strength she had carried quietly all along. As this story comes to an end, remember that behind every luxury lies a truth few ever see. If this story moved you, support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Until the next unforgettable true story, stay inspired and stay curious.